Every country around Thailand fell. Burma, taken by Britain. Vietnam, seized by France. Cambodia, colonized. Laos, colonized. Malaysia, colonized. Indonesia, colonized. The Philippines, colonized. Every single neighbor, gone. But Thailand stood. And the question that historians, kings, and curious minds have asked for over 100 years is simply this: how? Imagine you are standing in the middle of a fire. Every house around you is burning. Every family on your street has lost everything. The flames are closing in from the left, closing in from the right. And somehow your house doesn't burn. That is the story of Thailand. In the 19th century, the great European powers Britain and France were devouring Southeast Asia like hungry lions at a feast. They came with ships, guns, and the deep belief that they had the right to own other people's lands. And one by one, the kingdoms of Southeast Asia fell under their control. But in the middle of all that chaos, one kingdom refused to fall. The kingdom of Siam, what we call Thailand today, survived. It kept its throne, its culture, its independence, and its pride. While its neighbors were being stripped of everything, Siam walked a razor-thin line between two empires and came out the other side, whole. This is not just a history lesson. This is a story about brilliance, sacrifice, pain, and one of the most remarkable acts of national survival the world has ever seen. And it begins with a king. Chapter 1. The world that was closing in. To understand why Thailand's survival was so extraordinary, you first have to understand just how dangerous the world was for an Asian kingdom in the 1800s. According to historian David Wyatt, author of Thailand, A Short History, by the mid-1800s, Britain had already colonized India and was aggressively pushing into Burma, Thailand's neighbor to the west. Meanwhile, France was carving out its empire in Indochina, taking Vietnam, Cambodia, and eventually Laos, all of which bordered Thailand to the east. Based on the research of Dr. Thongchai Winachikul, a leading Thai historian and author of Siam Mapped, the European powers of that era did not just want land. They wanted total control of trade routes, of natural resources, of tax systems, of people. They came with a concept called civilization, and they used it as a weapon. If you were not European, they decided you were not civilized enough to rule yourself. This idea was the engine of colonialism, and Siam was squarely in its path. The British were to the west, the French were to the east, and both empires had their eyes on the fertile, resource-rich kingdom sitting right in the middle. The year is 1851. Siam needs a miracle. What it gets instead is a king. Chapter 2. The monk who became a king. His name was Mongkut. And before he became King Rama IV of Siam, he had spent 27 years as a Buddhist monk. Yes, a monk. For nearly 3 decades, while his half-brother ruled the kingdom, Mongkut lived in temples, studied scriptures, and did something that no other king of his time was doing. He studied the West. According to the BBC's historical archives and the work of scholar Maurizio Pelletti in Lords of Things, the fashioning of the Siamese monarchy's modern image, Mongkut taught himself Latin, English, and the sciences. He learned astronomy. He learned mathematics. He read Western newspapers and books. He corresponded with Western missionaries and diplomats. He understood, long before he wore a crown, that the world was changing, and that a kingdom that could not understand the change would be destroyed by it. When Mongkut finally took the throne at age 47, he was not a man who feared the West. He was a man who understood it. And that understanding, that quiet, patient, deeply studied understanding, would become Siam's greatest weapon. Market began modernizing. He invited Western advisors into the court. He signed trade treaties with Britain and France, not because he wanted to, but because he was wise enough to know that trade agreements were safer than bullets. He gave a little ground economically, that he would not lose ground militarily, based on the writings of journalist Joshua Colonial in his work on Southeast Asian diplomacy. Market's strategy was essentially this: give them what they want in the marketplace, so they have no excuse to come for what you have in the palace. It was brilliant. But brilliance alone was not going to be enough. Chapter 3: The son who finished what his father started. When King Market died in 1868, his son Chulalongkorn, who would become King Rama V, was just 15 years old. 15. He inherited a kingdom surrounded by empires, a court full of powerful nobles who did not always want change, and a world that was getting more dangerous every single year. And yet, King Chulalongkorn became arguably the greatest ruler in Thai history. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, the detailed biography compiled by Thai scholar Noel Alfred Batty, Chulalongkorn travelled to Singapore, Java, and India to see British and Dutch colonialism up close. He wanted to see it with his own eyes, the systems, the structures, the way the colonizers operated. And what he saw, he brought home and used, not to copy the West, but to make Siam strong enough that the West would have no reason or excuse to intervene. He abolished slavery. He reformed the legal system. He built roads, railways, and hospitals. He created a modern civil service. He sent Siamese students to Europe to be educated. He restructured the military. Chulalongkorn was doing something radical. He was modernizing Siam on Siam's own terms, based on research from the Asia-Pacific Journal of History. The king understood that one of the favorite excuses European powers used to justify colonization was that a country was backward or uncivilized. If Siam could prove that it was already modern, already capable of self-governance, already building its own institutions, then that excuse disappeared. He removed the ammunition from their guns before they could fire. But even that was not the whole story. Because geography and diplomacy were playing their own dangerous game, and one wrong move could have ended everything. Chapter 4: The buffer zone strategy. Playing two empires against each other. Here is the part that most people do not know. Here is the part that makes this story not just impressive, but almost unbelievable. Britain and France were rivals. They both wanted dominance in Southeast Asia. They both wanted more land, more trade, more power. And they were deeply suspicious of each other. Neither empire wanted the other to gain a major advantage. According to Dr. Skrendiversen, a scholar of Southeast Asian history at the University of Copenhagen, Siam's leaders recognized this tension and used it masterfully. They positioned Siam as a buffer state, a neutral zone between the two empires. The logic was elegant. If Britain took Siam, France would be furious. If France took Siam, Britain would be furious. But if Siam stayed independent, if it existed as a neutral zone between them, both empires could live with that outcome. Neither gained an advantage, neither lost ground. Based on diplomatic records analyzed by the School of Oriental and African Studies SOAS at the University of London, this became the informal agreement between Britain and France in 1896. Siam would serve as a buffer. They would not colonize it. They would leave it alone. But leaving it alone came at a cost. Siam had to give up land. In 1893, France forced Siam to surrender Laos. In 1907, more territory in Cambodia. To the British, Siam gave up parts of what is now Malaysia. The Siamese negotiators called this bending the bamboo in the wind, a phrase rooted in Thai wisdom that means you let yourself sway so you do not break. It was painful, deeply painful. Imagine giving up parts of your country, lands your people had lived on for generations, just to stay alive. That is what Siam did. And it worked.